A runway is only safe when the truth beneath it is solid. I said those words quietly, almost to myself, while a private jet dropped through the pale Kansas sky toward the strip of asphalt Vanessa Whitmore had carved across my family's farm. The engines rolled over the wheat fields like distant thunder. Champagne glasses trembled on white-clothed tables. Television cameras pointed toward a banner stretched between two polished steel posts. Cedar Ridge Executive Air Park. The future has landed. Vanessa stood beneath it in a white blazer and dark sunglasses, smiling like she owned every acre beneath her heels and every mile of sky above them. 6 weeks earlier, that ground had been wheat. Now runway lights blinked in two perfect rows through soil my father had worked for 43 years. The air smelled wrong. Jet fuel, hot rubber, fresh paint. Underneath it all, I could still catch the faint dry sweetness of cut grain, buried but not gone. I stood outside the temporary security fence with my father's old red windsock folded beneath my arm. The fabric was faded almost pink, its edges frayed from decades of Kansas wind. Vanessa noticed me just as the jet began its final descent. Her smile disappeared. She handed her champagne to a county commissioner and marched across the grass, heels sinking into the soft ground with every angry step. "You were warned not to come here," she said. Her perfume reached me before she did, sharp enough to cover the fuel fumes. Two private security guards followed behind her. One rested his hand near the radio clipped to his belt. I looked past them toward the runway. One of the threshold lights flickered out of rhythm. On, off, on again. A small mistake. The kind people ignored until metal met earth at 120 knots. "That aircraft shouldn't be coming in," I said. Vanessa laughed, loud enough for the nearest camera crew to hear. "You repair tractors, Mr. Walker?" "I work with aviation professionals." The jet lowered another 100 feet. Its landing lights burned white against the morning haze. People began clapping. Somewhere behind the stage, a generator coughed and rattled. The runway lights dimmed for half a second. I felt the old brass survey marker in my coat pocket pressing against my ribs. Vanessa had paved over its twin near the southern fence line. She thought asphalt could erase a boundary. She thought a county stamp could replace an owner's signature. Most of all, she thought the quiet man standing in muddy boots outside her fence had no idea what he was looking at. "Remove him," she told the guards. One stepped toward me. My phone vibrated once. I pulled it out and read the message on the screen. "Aircraft diverted. Runway status, closed." The jet's nose lifted. Its engines deepened into a hard metallic roar as it banked east, climbing away from Cedar Ridge. The applause died so quickly I could hear the windsock fabric shifting under my arm. Vanessa turned toward the empty runway. Her mouth opened, but nothing came out. Then every runway light went dark at once. What she didn't know was that the closure order had not come from the county, the sheriff, or one of her paid consultants. It came from the federal agency I directed. But to understand why an HOA president believed she could steal a farm, forge an airport, and sell access to the sky, you have to go back 6 weeks, to the morning I woke to the smell of hot asphalt cutting straight through my father's wheat. Where are you watching from, and what would you have done in my place? 6 weeks earlier, the sound reached me before the sunrise did. A deep mechanical growl rolled through the walls of the farmhouse, rattling the coffee cup beside my bed and waking the old window glass in its frame. For half a second, I thought it was thunder. Then the smell came through the screen: diesel, crushed limestone, and hot asphalt. No storm in Kansas smelled like that. I pulled on my boots and stepped onto the porch at 5:40 in the morning. The eastern sky was still gray, but the back field glowed under construction lights. Bulldozers crawled through my wheat like armored insects. A paving machine dragged a black stripe straight across the land my father had spent 43 years keeping alive. The wheat had been cut down in a path almost a mile long. My fence posts lay scattered in the ditch. The private property sign had been folded in half by a tire track. Farther south, an excavator dumped gravel into the irrigation channel that fed our lower fields. Every bucket of stone buried another piece of the system my father and I had dug by hand when I was 16. I crossed the yard without grabbing my coat. The cold air bit through my shirt. Mud stuck to my boots as I climbed the broken fence and walked toward the nearest machine. The operator saw me waving but kept moving. His blade pushed a mound of black soil over the roots of the old oak near the barn. My father planted that tree the week I was born. I stepped directly in front of the bulldozer. The engine dropped to an angry idle. Hydraulic lines hissed. The operator opened the cab door and leaned out. You trying to get yourself killed? You're on private property. He looked toward a temporary trailer near the road. Talk to the project manager. We've got county authorization. You have authorization to destroy my irrigation system? He shrugged. I just run the machine. A pearl-white Cadillac Escalade appeared at the edge of the field, rolling across the gravel as smoothly as if it had been invited. Vanessa Whitmore stepped out wearing cream-colored trousers, polished boots, and a white coat untouched by the mud around her. She carried a leather folder under one arm. Mr. Walker, she called, smiling as though we were meeting at a charity dinner. I was hoping we could avoid this kind of scene. I looked behind her. Survey stakes marked the runway centerline. Portable lights stood in 2 rows. Orange paint crossed my field in long, precise dashes. What exactly do you call this? Progress. She opened the folder and handed me a laminated site plan. The title read Cedar Ridge Community Aviation Corridor. Beneath it was a county seal, 3 signatures, and an old airport identification number I had not seen since childhood. My father's grass strip. He had used it for crop dusting planes in the 80s, before insurance costs, and his bad knee shut it down. The strip had never been paved. It had never belonged to Cedar Ridge, and it had been officially closed 27 years ago. Vanessa tapped the map with one manicured fingernail. This land contains a previously established agricultural airfield. The HOA has secured development rights under the county's abandoned infrastructure provisions. There are no abandoned infrastructure rights on my deed. Your deed is being reviewed. The way she said it made my teeth press together. Then I saw the signature at the bottom of the landowner consent form. Samuel Walker. My father's name. The date beside it was 8 months after we buried him. For a moment, the machinery disappeared beneath the rush of blood in my ears. Vanessa mistook my silence for defeat. Construction will be completed in 6 weeks, she said. After that, Cedar Ridge will become the first private fly-in community in the county. I looked at the coordinates printed beneath the runway diagram. The old grass strip had begun near the north pasture. These coordinates had been shifted almost half a mile, straight through my wheat. I folded the map once and handed it back. Who gave you this survey? Her smile sharpened. People who understand aviation, Mr. Walker. Behind her, the bulldozer pushed forward again. The old oak leaned, roots tearing from the earth with a sound like heavy cloth ripping. Vanessa turned toward her Escalade. You should consider selling before the project affects the value of what you have left. I watched the tree hit the ground. Then I looked at the runway number printed on her map and understood exactly what she had done. She had not discovered an abandoned airfield. She had stolen the identity of one. By Thursday evening, Vanessa had turned theft into a sales presentation. The Cedar Ridge clubhouse smelled like lemon polish, expensive perfume, and coffee that had been burning since noon. Folding chairs filled the room. A projector cast a glossy image across the wall. White houses, private hangars, manicured lawns, and small aircraft parked beside swimming pools. At the center of it all was the runway cutting through my farm. Vanessa stood beneath the screen in a navy blazer, one hand resting on a podium marked Cedar Ridge HOA. Behind her, a gold title shimmered across the image. Cedar Ridge Air Estates live above the ordinary. Property values are projected to triple within 18 months, she announced. Applause rolled through the room. Most of the homeowners were not villains. They were teachers, retirees, accountants, and young families who had been told that a private runway would transform their neighborhood into something exclusive. Vanessa had sold them the dream before she had secured the ground beneath it. I sat in the back row with mud still dried around the edges of my boots. On the screen, animated aircraft followed glowing lines toward the runway. The approach path crossed 3 homes, a playground, and the southern end of my cattle pasture. Vanessa pointed toward a row of proposed hangars. Each premium residence will have direct taxi access. Our consultants have confirmed full compliance with federal aviation standards. I studied the diagram. The runway lights were spaced incorrectly. The safety area was too narrow. A county water tower stood inside the projected approach surface, but someone had removed it from the rendering. Then Vanessa noticed me. Her smile tightened. Mr. Walker, she said, I'm surprised you came. I wanted to hear which part of my farm you plan to sell next. A few people shifted in their chairs. Vanessa laughed softly. The aviation corridor is not your farm. It is a restored community asset. She clicked to the next slide. A photograph appeared showing the old grass strip my father had operated in 1987. His yellow crop dusting plane sat beside the barn. My chest tightened. She had taken the picture from our county archive and cropped my father out of it. This proves the airfield has always served the surrounding community, she said. No, I answered. It proves my father owned an airplane. Her expression cooled. A man near the front raised his hand. Vanessa said the Federal Aviation Administration already reviewed the plan. I looked at the projected runway number. Which regional office reviewed it? Vanessa tilted her head. Our professionals handled those details. What classification did they file? Silence. I stood and walked closer to the screen. Where is the displaced threshold? Where is the obstacle survey? Why does your approach path pass through a water tower that your rendering pretends does not exist? The projector fan hummed behind me. Vanessa folded her arms. You repair farm equipment, Mr. Walker. I work with aviation professionals. I pointed to the runway lights. Those fixtures are designed for a private driveway, not an aircraft movement area. Your spacing changes 3 times before the midpoint. The generator shown in your permit application cannot support half this system. Her face remained still, but her fingers tightened around the remote. I could see the calculation behind her eyes. She had expected anger. She had not expected knowledge. You are disrupting an official HOA meeting, she said. Security will escort you out. 2 guards moved toward me. I did not resist. As I passed the last row, I noticed a young man standing beside the projector table. His name badge read Owen Price, project engineer. He avoided my eyes, but his hands were shaking. That told me more than anything Vanessa had said. I returned to the farmhouse after dark. The room still carried the dry cedar smell my father loved. In the back hall, beneath his old canvas jacket, I found the brass key to the equipment shed. Inside, dust floated through my flashlight beam. His faded red windsock rested on a shelf beside a metal box. Underneath it lay his flight log, an original photograph of the grass strip, and a survey cap stamped Walker property line. The runway in the photograph ran north. Vanessa's runway ran east. Someone had not restored my father's airfield. They had rotated it, moved it, and used its identity to cover a completely different project. Then headlights swept across the shed wall. A vehicle stopped outside. The handle turned once. Then someone began cutting the lock. By sunrise, the 2 missing survey stakes were lying beside my workshop door. Whoever returned them had wiped off the mud but left fresh prime marks along the metal caps. That told me 2 things. First, Vanessa knew about the camera. Second, she was scared enough to undo the damage, but not scared enough to stop. I uploaded the footage to 3 separate drives, printed still frames, and called Rachel Bennett, a property attorney I'd worked with on commercial surveys. She arrived before noon in a gray sedan dusted with highway salt, carrying a legal pad and the expression of someone who hated bullies almost as much as bad paperwork. We walked the road together. Her boots crunched over the gravel while I showed her the orange paint, the sign, and the holes where the stakes had been. Why this road, she asked. There's another entrance on the north side. Too narrow, I said. Steep grade. Fire trucks can't turn around. I pulled the county planning packet from my truck. Cedar Hollow's expansion included 32 houses pressed against a wooded ridge. The county had approved the concept, but final occupancy depended on a second emergency route. My road was the only straight connection to the highway. Rachel stopped walking. So without your easement, they can build the houses. But they can't legally sell them. The afternoon wind carried the smell of pine sap and cold dirt. Somewhere beyond the trees, a nail gun hammered from the construction site in short bursts. 32 foundations. 32 mortgages. Millions of dollars trapped behind one unsigned line. That was when Vanessa's $5,000 offer stopped looking insulting and started looking desperate. At 3 that afternoon, her husband arrived. Greg Whitmore drove a black pickup with his company logo on the doors and chrome wheels too clean for a contractor's truck. He stepped out wearing polished work boots and a fleece vest embroidered with Whitmore Development. Vanessa followed in her BMW. They approached like they were closing a sale. Greg smiled first. Nathan, I think this got off on the wrong foot. Your men moved my survey markers. The smile stayed, but his jaw tightened. You have proof of that? I held up my phone. A still frame showed his truck beside the ditch. The license plate was visible. The men weren't. Headlight glare had erased their faces. Greg leaned closer, then shrugged. Could be anyone's truck. It's yours. Company vehicles get borrowed. Rachel stepped beside me. Then I'm sure your dispatch records will clear that up. Vanessa's perfume reached us before her voice did. Sweet, expensive, sharp enough to sting. This hostility is unnecessary. Cedar Hollow is offering a community partnership. She handed Rachel a revised easement agreement. $10,000 now. Permanent vehicle access, utility rights, drainage rights, construction access, and authority for the HOA to maintain the road as deemed necessary. Rachel read 2 pages, then laughed once. This doesn't buy access. It gives you control. Vanessa looked at me. Control is such an emotional word. So is trespassing. Greg stepped forward. He had 6 inches and 50 pounds on me, but men like him mistake size for leverage. You need to think about what happens if the county decides your workshop violates setback requirements. I looked past him toward the red line painted through my grass. You mean the setback measured from the boundary your crew tried to move? His face went still. Vanessa recovered first. Friday, Mr. Cole. After that, our legal department will proceed. They turned toward their vehicles. That should have been the end of it. Instead, Greg paused beside the brass HOA sign and kicked gravel over the hole where I had pulled it out. You're standing in the way of progress, he said. I watched his truck disappear around the bend, diesel hanging in the air. Rachel unfolded the expansion map across my hood. At the bottom, beneath layers of planning stamps, one parcel number kept appearing along the proposed route, clubhouse lot, and drainage basin. 14A. It wasn't mine. It wasn't listed under Cedar Hollow either. Who owns that? I asked. Rachel circled the number with her pen. That, she said, is exactly what we're going to find out. The bolt cutters bit through the shed lock with a sharp metallic crack. I killed my flashlight and stepped behind the old fertilizer cabinet. Dust scratched the back of my throat. Outside, boots moved across the gravel. 2 sets, slow and careful. Whoever they were, they had not come to steal tools. The door opened 3 inches, then stopped against the broken chain. A man whispered, "Cut it again." The second snap echoed through the shed. They entered carrying phone lights. One wore a Cedar Ridge security jacket. The other had the reflective vest of Vanessa's construction company. I recognized him from the Runway crew. Find the closure letter before Walker does, the guard said. My hand tightened around my phone. I started recording. They pulled open drawers, kicked aside boxes, and searched the shelves where my father had kept 40 years of maintenance records. Metal clanged against concrete. Paper tore. The smell of old oil mixed with their cheap aftershave. The construction worker lifted the metal box I had opened minutes earlier. Nothing. Checked beneath the floorboards. That was enough. I stepped out of the shadows. Looking for something? Both men froze. The guard turned first. His flashlight hit my face, then dropped to my phone. You're trespassing in a restricted construction zone, he said. This is my shed. He reached toward me. I raised the phone higher. And now it is a recorded burglary. The construction worker backed toward the door. The guard tried one more time to sound official. Mrs. Whitmore authorized an emergency inspection. Did she authorize you to destroy the lock? Neither answered. Headlights swept across the doorway. They ran before the vehicle stopped, disappearing between the machinery sheds and the dark wheat field. Sheriff Daniel Hayes arrived 10 minutes later. He studied the broken chain, the scattered papers, and the video on my phone. His jaw tightened when he heard the guard mention the closure letter. I'll file the report, he said. But Vanessa claims this entire section is under temporary county control. She can claim the moon. That does not put it on her deed. Hayes looked tired rather than convinced. By sunrise, Vanessa had already begun rewriting the story. A local news van parked beside my front gate. Reporters filmed the construction crews while Vanessa stood in a hard hat and safety vest, explaining that an angry absentee landowner was sabotaging a project that would create jobs and increase emergency access for the community. By noon, my photograph was circulating online beneath headlines calling me anti-development. By dinner, Cedar Ridge residents had received an email accusing me of threatening workers, damaging equipment, and attempting to interfere with aviation safety. The woman stealing my land had made me the criminal. 3 days later, I attended the county commission meeting. The chamber smelled like damp coats and burnt coffee. Vanessa sat at the front beside Commissioner Martin Cole, her leather folder arranged neatly before her. A row of homeowners wore matching blue stickers that read Support Cedar Ridge Air Estates. When my name was called, I carried the forged map, the survey cap, and my father's flight log to the podium. The runway crosses private land, I said. Its coordinates do not match the historic airstrip used in the permit application. Vanessa leaned toward her microphone. Mr. Walker is not an aviation expert. A few people laughed. Cole tapped his gavel. Do you have a current professional assessment? I have the original land records. That was not my question. Vanessa stood. This community cannot be held hostage by one bitter heir who refuses to accept progress. Her supporters applauded. She looked directly at me. You fix tractors, Mr. Walker. Let qualified people handle the sky. I felt the brass survey cap inside my pocket, cold against my palm. I could have ended her performance with one sentence. I did not. Instead, I placed the forged map on the evidence table and said, then let every qualified person examine what you signed. That night, my security camera caught two men returning to the shed. This time they carried gasoline. The gasoline can hit the shed floor with a hollow metal thud. I watched through the camera feed from my kitchen, every nerve in my body tightening. One man held a flashlight. The other twisted the cap from the can and began pouring a dark line across the threshold. I called Sheriff Hayes before they struck the match. Deputies arrived with lights off, tires whispering over the gravel. The two men ran through the wheat, but one slipped in the irrigation ditch and went down hard. The other reached the construction road before a patrol car blocked him. Both worked for Vanessa's contractor. Both claimed they were removing hazardous materials. By morning, Vanessa had a different explanation. She told reporters the men were independent workers who had misunderstood instructions. Then she accused me of staging the incident to delay the runway. The smell of gasoline stayed in the shed for days. So did the message. The county hearing took place the following Monday. Vanessa arrived with 3 attorneys, 2 engineers, and enough paper to bury the truth under its own weight. Her legal team presented easement agreements, environmental reports, safety certifications, and a landowner consent form bearing my father's signature. Every document had seals. Every page had initials. Every lie wore a tie. My attorney, Nora Bennett, sat beside me without touching the coffee in front of her. The county chamber hummed with fluorescent lights and whispered conversations. Vanessa's supporters filled the first 4 rows. Local cameras pointed toward the commission table. Commissioner Martin Cole adjusted his glasses. The question before us is whether construction may continue while ownership claims are reviewed. One of Vanessa's engineers displayed satellite images showing an aviation corridor across my farm. The images were recent. The airport registration number was not. I placed the original survey cap on the table. This marker proves the declared runway boundary is false. Vanessa's attorney barely looked at it. A loose object proves nothing without certified placement records. I handed over my father's flight log. He smiled. Historical memorabilia is not a legal survey. Vanessa watched me from across the aisle. Her expression never changed, but one finger tapped slowly against her folder. Cole called a recess. 20 minutes later, the commission returned. Construction could continue. The room erupted in applause. Vanessa stepped outside beneath the courthouse columns and opened a bottle of champagne. The cork snapped through the cold air. Reporters crowded around her while she described the ruling as a victory for progress, safety, and responsible development. She lifted her glass toward me. You should have sold when I offered. I said nothing. An older man stood near the courthouse steps, staring at the brass survey cap in my hand. His name was Caleb Reed. He had surveyed farms across the county for 40 years and had worked with my father before retiring. He took the cap from me and rubbed dirt from the stamp numbers. This was never placed where she says it was, he murmured. You remember the line? I said it. That evening, Caleb followed me to the equipment shed. The broken lock still hung from the door. Inside, he moved past the cabinets and knelt beside a warped section of flooring. Sam never trusted county storage, he said. The brass key from my father's shelf fit a hidden lock beneath the boards. A narrow steel compartment opened with a dry scrape. Inside were the original property survey, the official 1987 runway closure letter, and a federal notice prohibiting reuse of the old airport identification number. There was also a signed statement from my father confirming he had never transferred aviation rights to Cedar Ridge. Nora read every page at my kitchen table. Then she leaned back and looked toward the black strip of asphalt beyond the window. "We can stop them now," I said. "No," she answered. Outside, runway lights flickered against the wheat. "Let Vanessa finish. Let her certify ownership. Let her send these lies to the bank, the insurer, and the federal government." Her voice stayed calm. "Right now, she is trespassing." Nora closed the file. "Once she signs those documents, she becomes a fraud. Power is most dangerous when it becomes personal. That was why I made the call before sunrise." The farmhouse kitchen was dark except for the blue light of my laptop. Outside, the unfinished runway lights blinked through the fog, steady except for one fixture near the midpoint that kept missing the rhythm. On. Off. A pause too long. Then on again. I opened the secure ethics portal, attached the property records, and disclosed everything: my ownership of Walker Farm, my father's airstrip, the forged documents, and the active dispute with Cedar Ridge. At 6:12 a.m., I formally removed myself from every federal decision connected to the runway. No calls to inspectors. No private orders. No favors. If Vanessa was going down, she was going down under the weight of facts examined by people who owed me nothing. Nora read the confirmation over my shoulder. "You just gave up the fastest weapon you had." I gave up the weapon she expects me to misuse. By noon, an independent review team had been assigned through another regional chain of command. Their names were kept from me. Their schedule was kept from me. That was exactly how it needed to be. For the next 9 days, Nora and I built the case from the ground up. We measured the runway coordinates with calibrated equipment. Caleb located the original survey points beneath weeds, gravel, and one fresh layer of asphalt. My cameras provided time-stamped footage of the fence demolition, the shed break-in, and the gasoline can sliding across the concrete floor. Nora requested utility records. The runway lighting permit listed a transformer that had never been installed. Fuel invoices showed Aviation gasoline delivered before the site had legal authorization to store it. The environmental report claimed no irrigation channels crossed the project area. I photographed the crushed concrete pipe still carrying muddy water beneath the pavement. Every lie left a physical mark. Then Vanessa began signing. She certified to the county that Cedar Ridge controlled the land. She certified to the insurer that the runway met safety requirements. She certified to the bank that no ownership dispute existed. She certified to investors that federal approval was complete. Each signature landed in my inbox through public record requests, black ink on white paper, clean and confident. Vanessa was not trying to escape the hole anymore. She was furnishing it. On the 10th night, rain struck the farmhouse roof in hard, uneven bursts. I was comparing the lighting diagrams when my phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. "Do not call. Check your north mailbox." I waited 20 minutes, watching the road through the kitchen window. No headlights. No movement. The mailbox stood half a mile from the house beside the old county road. I drove there without turning on the truck's interior light. Rain hissed against the windshield. Gravel cracked under the tires. When I opened the mailbox, I found a padded envelope wrapped in clear plastic. Inside was a flash drive and a Cedar Ridge employee badge. Owen Price, project engineer. The drive contained inspection photos, internal schedules, and hundreds of emails. One message had been sent by Vanessa 3 months earlier. "Walker consent is impossible. Finish the runway before anyone checks the coordinates." Another ordered Owen to reuse the old airport identification number because obtaining a new one would invite unnecessary federal attention. A third instructed the contractor to cover the southern survey marker with asphalt. The brass cap in my pocket suddenly felt heavier. My phone rang once, then stopped. A second message appeared. "She knows someone copied the files." Before I could respond, headlights flared behind me. A dark pickup blocked the road. Another stopped in front. Rain hammered the truck roof as 2 men stepped out, their faces hidden beneath hoods. One carried a crowbar. The other walked toward my door holding a can of black spray paint. He raised it toward the windshield and painted 3 words across the glass. "Stay out, farmer." I sat motionless until they drove away. Then I wiped one clear line through the wet paint and looked toward the blinking runway lights beyond the fields. Vanessa still believed she was intimidating a man who repaired tractors. She had no idea she had just threatened the director of the Federal Aviation Administration and handed an independent federal investigation the final piece it needed. 3 nights before the grand opening, the runway came alive without permission. I heard the generator before I saw the lights. Its low electrical hum moved through the farmhouse walls at 11:43 p.m., followed by the sharp smell of heated insulation drifting across the field. When I stepped onto the porch, 2 rows of white lights burned through the darkness, cutting a glowing path across my wheat. A small single-engine aircraft waited near the north end. Its propeller turned slowly. Someone was preparing to test the runway. I grabbed my coat, my phone, and the original site diagram. Then I drove toward the construction entrance with every camera recording. The closer I got, the worse it looked. The threshold lights were the wrong color. The final pair glowed white instead of red. 3 fixtures had been placed inside the required safety area. The generator coughed every time the rotating beacon swept across the field, making the entire system dim for half a second. Then I saw the cattle. 5 of them stood beyond the temporary fence where the contractor had cut through my pasture. 1 broken panel hung open, leaving a clear path onto the runway. A pilot approaching at night would never see a black steer standing against black asphalt. I stopped beside the gate and called the sheriff's office. Then I called the emergency aviation reporting line, identified the location, and reported an unauthorized nighttime operation. I did not touch the lights. I did not block the aircraft. I did not give anyone an excuse to call this sabotage. I documented wind direction, visibility, generator condition, fence failure, aircraft registration. Every minute received a timestamp. A man wearing a headset waved the aircraft forward. The engine climbed into a hard metallic roar. Dust lifted behind the propeller. I stepped onto the gravel shoulder and raised one hand. Shut it down. The pilot reduced power but kept the engine running. A construction supervisor marched toward me. You cannot interfere with a certified flight operation. This runway is not certified. He pointed toward a temporary sign displaying the stolen airport identification number. We have authorization. You have a sign. Headlights flooded the road behind me. Vanessa's Escalade stopped so close to my truck that gravel struck the rear bumper. She stepped out wearing a silk blouse beneath a reflective vest, her hair still perfectly arranged despite the hour. Sheriff Hayes arrived 30 seconds later. Vanessa reached him first. This man has entered an active aviation facility and endangered a pilot, she said. I want him arrested. Hayes looked toward the idling aircraft, then at the open cattle fence. Who approved this test? Our aviation consultant. Name. Vanessa ignored him and turned to me. You have spent 6 weeks harassing contractors, frightening investors, and pretending your family history gives you control over modern aviation. The cameras mounted near the gate recorded every word. I pointed toward the final runway lights. What color should those be? Her eyes narrowed. This is not one of your tractor repairs. What protects the approach path? My professionals handled it. What happens when that generator drops voltage during rollout? She stepped closer until I could smell her perfume over the exhaust. You don't know the first thing about aviation. I looked directly at the nearest security camera. Keep the cameras running. The aircraft engine shut down. Silence rushed across the field. Hayes ordered the pilot out of the cockpit and temporarily suspended the test until the county fire marshal could inspect the site. Vanessa protested, called Commissioner Cole, and threatened everyone within reach. But even as deputies sealed the fuel tank and photographed the broken fence, she refused to cancel the opening ceremony. The event continues Saturday, she announced. The first official landing will happen exactly as scheduled. She smiled at me as though the stop test had changed nothing. Then the generator overloaded. A blue flash burst from the control box. The midpoint lights died first. The others flickered down the runway in uneven waves until only one remained. The same light that had been blinking out of rhythm since construction began. On. Off. A pause too long. Then darkness. Vanessa stared at the dead runway. I watched smoke curl from the electrical cabinet and knew she had just given the independent investigators everything they needed. An unauthorized aircraft, an unsafe system, a false certification, and her own voice ordering the project forward. She still believed Saturday would be her victory. I knew it would be the day every lie she had signed finally landed. The first jet appeared over the western tree line at 9:17 Saturday morning. Its engines rolled across the farm like thunder trapped inside metal. Vanessa stood beneath the Cedar Ridge Executive Air Park banner, one hand wrapped around a champagne glass, the other lifted toward the television cameras. Behind her, investors crowded beside polished black cars. Homeowners held phones above their heads. The runway lights burned through the morning haze. All except one. The midpoint fixture still blinked out of rhythm. On. Off. A pause too long. Then on again. I stood outside the temporary fence with my father's faded windsock beneath my arm. Vanessa saw me and stopped smiling. "Remove him," she told security. 2 guards moved toward me. The jet descended lower. Its landing lights shone directly over the water tower Vanessa's plans claimed did not exist. My phone vibrated. Aircraft diverted. Runway status, closed. The aircraft's nose lifted. Its engines deepened into a hard roar as it banked east and climbed away from the runway. The applause died. Vanessa stared at the empty sky. Then every runway light went dark. A white government vehicle turned through the main gate. Another followed. Then 3 more. Federal aviation inspectors stepped out first, carrying sealed folders and equipment cases. Behind them came state investigators, the county fire marshal, 2 insurance representatives, and a fraud examiner from Vanessa's bank. Commissioner Martin Cole dropped his champagne glass. It struck the pavement and shattered. Vanessa marched toward the lead inspector. "This is a private facility," she snapped. "You cannot interrupt an approved opening." The inspector handed her a red notice. Emergency closure. Effective immediately. Her face tightened. On whose authority? Independent federal review. A survey crew entered through the southern gate. Caleb Reed walked beside them, carrying the original brass property marker. He knelt near the runway edge, brushed loose gravel aside, and placed it against the matching coordinates in my father's survey. "The pavement crosses Walker property by 682 feet, he said. Nora opened the steel file box on a folding table. One document at a time, she laid out the truth. The 1987 closure letter. The federal prohibition against reusing the airport identification number. My father's original land statement. The forged consent form dated 8 months after his death. An insurance representative compared Vanessa's certification with photographs of the failed generator and incorrect lights. The banker held up her signed declaration stating no ownership dispute existed. Then Owen Price stepped from behind the investigators. Vanessa's expression changed. Not fear. Recognition. Owen handed over the printed emails. "Walker consent is impossible. Finish the runway before anyone checks the coordinates. Cover the southern survey marker with asphalt." Vanessa looked around for Commissioner Cole, but 2 state investigators were already speaking to him beside the stage. She pointed at me. "This is his doing. He is a farmer with a personal grudge." I walked through the open gate. My boots struck the asphalt she had poured over my wheat. "You don't know anything about aviation," she said. "You have no authority here." I removed my federal identification and placed it beside the false certification. "I removed myself from this investigation 6 weeks ago," I said. "Every finding here came from an independent review." She looked down at the identification. The color drained from her face. "For the record, Vanessa, I am the director of the Federal Aviation Administration." Nobody moved. Even the cameras seemed silent. I tapped the regulation number she had copied onto the forged document. "And I signed a rule you falsified." The sheriff stepped behind her. Vanessa backed away, knocking over the champagne table. Glasses crashed across the pavement. The smell of spilled wine mixed with jet fuel and hot asphalt. She was arrested for fraud, forgery, criminal trespass, destruction of property, and obstruction of an investigation. Commissioner Cole was escorted away for questioning. The bank froze the project accounts before the ceremony chairs had been folded. One by one, workers covered the runway signs. The final blinking light stayed on for 3 seconds longer than the rest. Then it went dark. Vanessa had built her victory across my farm. By noon, it had become the largest piece of evidence against her. 3 months later, the first strip of wheat pushed through the scar where Vanessa's runway had crossed my farm. The shoots were thin and bright green, trembling in the morning wind. Around them, excavators lifted broken slabs of asphalt and dropped them into waiting trucks. Each impact sounded like distant thunder. The air no longer smelled of jet fuel or overheated wiring. It smelled like wet soil again. The court ordered Cedar Ridge to pay for the restoration, but the homeowners were not forced to carry Vanessa's debt. Investigators traced the money through shell companies, inflated contracts, and accounts connected to her real estate business. She had charged the HOA twice for the runway lights. She had taken commissions from the construction company. She had used community funds to pay consultants who signed reports they never performed. The private air park had never been designed for the neighborhood. It had been designed to make Vanessa rich. Commissioner Martin Cole resigned before the state filed bribery and conspiracy charges. The contractor lost his license. The security guards who broke into my shed accepted plea agreements and testified about the orders they had received. Vanessa refused every offer. She said the documents were misunderstood. She said Owen had betrayed her. She said I had used federal power to destroy a woman who wanted to improve her community. The independent review records told a different story. I had not signed the closure order. I had not selected the investigators. I had not attended a single enforcement meeting. All I had done was preserve the evidence and wait for the truth to reach people who could not be bought. Cedar Ridge held a new election in the same clubhouse where Vanessa had once called me a bitter heir. This time, there were no gold banners or champagne glasses. The room smelled of coffee, folding chairs, and fresh paint. The homeowners elected a retired school librarian named Linda Parker as president. Her first motion required every contract, vote, and payment to be published online. It passed unanimously. The legal portion of the runway did not disappear completely. After months of review, the county converted a short section into an emergency landing site for medical helicopters and wildfire crews. No luxury hangars. No private jets. No fake promises to buyers. Just a safe strip of pavement with honest coordinates and a purpose worth defending. Owen Price became the project's safety engineer. The first time he visited the farm after the trial, he stood beside the rebuilt fence and stared toward the new emergency pad. "I should have spoken sooner," he said. "You spoke before someone got hurt." He nodded, but the guilt stayed in his eyes. I handed him my father's old brass key. "Use it to open the equipment shed when the inspectors need the original records." His fingers closed around it carefully. Some mistakes deserve punishment. Others deserve a chance to be corrected. On the anniversary of my father's death, Caleb helped me set a new steel pole near the northern field. I climbed the ladder and attached the faded red windsock to the top. The fabric caught the wind immediately. It snapped once, then stretched east beneath a clear Kansas sky. Below it, we reset the original brass survey cap in concrete where my father had placed the boundary decades earlier. I ran my thumb across the stamped words. Walker property line. The mark looked small beside 400 acres of open land. But that small mark had survived forged signatures, political favors, bulldozers, fire, and 6 inches of asphalt. That evening, I sat on the porch while the sun dropped behind the wheat. A medical helicopter crossed the horizon and landed safely on the county pad. Its rotors slowed, then stopped. No champagne, no cameras, just a patient getting the help they needed. Vanessa believed the person with the loudest voice owned the room. Then she believed the person with the most official-looking paper owned the land. Finally, she believed building the runway fast enough would make the truth irrelevant. She was wrong every time. The land remembered where its boundaries were. The records remembered who had signed them. And the sky never belonged to her. Justice did not arrive with sirens or shouting. It came through coordinates, timestamps, and one honest signature after another. Power does not need to scream. It checks the evidence, protects the innocent, and waits for the truth to land.